for 1 year. He would go and meet scholars of hadith and then write down hadith and memorize hadith and have the jurisprudence of the hadith. As Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala narrates from Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu, Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fid din. Whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills to have good, yufaqihu fid din. He gives him superlative understanding of the religion. So Imam Abdullah bin al-Mubarak rahimahullah ta'ala would write down hadith and memorize hadith and learn the meanings of the hadith for 1 year. Then for the other year he would go out to the borders of the Khilafah and he would join the army of the Khalifa and he would defend the borders of al-Islam, of Darul Islam, of the Caliphate. So like this he would have the reward of jihad and the reward of talabul ilm, of seeking knowledge. This same Abdullah bin al-Mubarak, the father of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, shook hands with him. So this means that al-ishtighalu bil hadith, busying themselves with hadith, was something Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala inherited from his father. But his father passed away and Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala grew up as an orphan, like many ulama. Imam Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala is an example of a person, him and his brother Imam Ahmad Al-Ghazali, both of them were raised as orphans. Imam Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala was born in the year 450 Hijri and passed away in the year 505 Hijri. But he grew up as what? As an orphan. So likewise, Imam Al-Bukhari, Muhammad bin Ismail Al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, he grew up as an orphan. Initially, in Darul Islam, in the Khilafah, how learning would process is that a child would go what they would refer to as Kuttab. The Kuttab would sit in the Masjid because the Masjid were centers of learning. When the child would go, they would learn how to read and write Arabic. This was the first step. But they would also memorize Al-Quranul Kareem. They would memorize Al-Quranul Kareem and they would learn language. The importance of linguistics cannot be undermined. Vocabulary and having a rich vocabulary can never be undermined. In fact, if a child up to the age of 10 is only taught language, it's sufficient. So they would memorize thousands of words. And this is how Imam al-Nahaw, the leader of this grammarians, Imam Sibawayh rahimahullah ta'ala, studied. He studied in the Masjid. Who was Imam Sibawayh? Sibawayh was the leader of the grammarians. He was a Persian. And what does Sibawayh mean? In our language, we say Sahib. What is Sahib? An apple. Sahib is from Farsi. Sibawayh is the fragrance of an apple. That's the meaning of the name. He went to study hadith, and when he went to study hadith, he recited the hadith. Because he was a non-Arab, he made mistakes in his recitation. So the hadith scholar said to him, you must first correct your language. Al-Imam Sibawayh rahimahullah went and studied language and never left the study of language until he became the Imam of Nahaw. Meaning in Arabic language today, there is a book known as Al-Kitab. Al-Kitab, the book, meaning the book in grammar, is the book of Sibawayh, who laid down so many principles and foundations, and the madaris of the grammarians, the schools of the grammarians. That's why there are two ways of learning grammar. There is the way of the Arabs, which is represented by Ibn Malik and others, Muhammad bin Malik, the author of the Alfiyah. And there is the way of the non-Arabs, al-Nahwu ala tariqat al-Ajam, learning grammar according to the way of the non-Arabs. Like Sayyid al-Sharif al-Jurjani rahimahullah, he has his famous book Nahaw Mir. Nahaw Mir is written in accordance with the way of the Ajam, the non-Arabs, in learning Nahaw. So Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah lived in an environment where the Arabic language was spoken because the Caliphate extended out to these regions and people spoke Arabic, he went to the Kutab and he would write down the Arabic language, he would memorize the linguistics, the mufradat, words, and memorize Al-Quran Al-Kareem. And then he became busied after the age of 10, al-ishtighal bil-hadith, talabul hadith, seeking the knowledge, the most noble knowledge, which is going to the circles of ashabul hadith, the scholars of hadith, sitting in their circles and writing down the hadith and memorizing the hadith. When he attended those circles, from the age of 10, the signs of a genius appeared in the discussions of this young boy who was at the time known as Muhammad bin Ismail. For instance, when he would sit down in the circle of hadith, and remember, in those days circles of hadith were huge, to the extent that Muhammad bin Yusuf al-Farabri, the narrator, one of the narrators of the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, he states that over 90,000 men narrated the Sahih of Imam Bukhari. Over 90,000 people. Meaning, this means that over 90,000 people attended his gatherings, heard the recitation of the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, wrote down the Sahih, and many of them memorized the Sahih. This was the extent of how busy people were with knowledge. Even up to the 5th century, the likes of Al-Imam Abu Bakr, Ahmad bin Thabit, Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi rahimahullah, who was the leader of the Ahlul Hadith in his time, his gatherings would be filled with people who would listen to the dictation of the Hadith, and thousands of them, whenever he would say, Qala Rasulullah, thousands of them would recite Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And this is why Al-Imam Ja'far As-Sadiq rahimahullah ta'ala said, the sign of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah is kathratu salawati was salam, is abundant salawat and salam. Why? Because the majalis of the Ahlul Hadith are the majalis of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Meaning in those times, the scholars of Hadith would sit, and because so many times they would say, Qala Rasulullah, the audience would recite Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and so many times the salawat and salam was recited in the gatherings. So at one point, Al-Imam Muhammad bin Ismail rahimahullah ta'ala was sitting, and the scholar of Hadith, he narrates the chain of narration. What is the chain of narration? From the scholar of Hadith up to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they will say haddathana, narrated to us, or akhbarana, related to us, and they would say the name of the narrator, Qutaybah ibn Sa'id, for instance, or Al-Imam Malik bin Anas, for instance. They would say the name of the narrator. During the dictation, the teacher said, حدثنا أبو الزبير عن إبراهيم. Al-Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, a child, he intervened. He said, this cannot be Abu Zubayr. The teacher said, why? He said, because Abu Zubayr did not narrate from Ibrahim. The teacher reprimanded Al-Imam Bukhari. At that point, Al-Imam Al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala said, go and check your original manuscript. Because this was amazing. Even the teacher was narrating from memory. They would narrate everything from the memory, some of them. So the teacher went and verified in the manuscript. He found that it was not Abu Az-Zubayr, it was Az-Zubayr, which is a different narrator. So he corrected this. But this was from a young child. What does this indicate? This was an indication of the fact that Al-Imam Al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala was the Imam of what? Ilalul Hadith. a science and a subject of ilm al-hadith, where outwardly a hadith may have no fault, meaning the chain has no fault, or the text has no fault. But those who are masters of hadith, those who are discerning in hadith, were able to point out discrepancies. And this is why Imam Bukhari is renowned in this field, alongside with other ulama. Like, for instance, Muhammad bin Idris al-Razi, who is known as Abu Hatim al-Razi, contemporary to Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala. He was also renowned for the subject of ilul hadith, being able to observe the chain of hadith and detecting a subtle discrepancy within the chain or a discrepancy within the text of the hadith. This science is known as ilul hadith. And Abu Hatim al-Razi, rahimahullah ta'ala, was well renowned for this. And there was also his son, Ibn Abi Hatim al-Razi. Al-Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, became so proficient in this field at a young age that at the age of 18 he wrote a book which is At-Tarikh al-Kabir, the big history. What is this book? Al-Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, had memorized the names of as-Sahabatul Kiram, their dates of death, where they passed away, and what hadith they narrated, and where they resided. For instance, Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu resided in the city of Al-Kufa. Someone like Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala will know the date of birth of Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, where he resided, which city, Al-Kufa, who were his students in Al-Kufa. He will know the names of every single student, where that student passed away, how many hadiths that student narrated from Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, and the discrepancies where the students may even contradict one another. This is the subtlety of hadith and the science of hadith, which the masters of hadith were renowned for, the likes of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah.